Hello and welcome to the newest addition to the Paul Stops Here collection, the Slam I Am podcast. I am your host Paul Witwer and this is my basketball podcast. Each episode I will be joined by two guests to talk about topics related to basketball. What makes this podcast different from others is that each week I will be joined by someone who follows basketball closely and another person who doesn't follow basketball. This way we can get a variety of different opinions in a new and entertaining way. I hope you all enjoy the podcast and continue to stay tuned for more episodes, and please go check out my website, thepaulstopshere.com, for more content like this.
Finish with that, I suppose you're gonna fly, huh?
Hey, players only, baby.
Bang! Bang! Ain't no rules in the dog can't play basketball.
I do not like them, Sam, I am.
Hello, and welcome to the first audio edition to the Paul Stops Here collection, the Slam I Am basketball podcast. I am your host, Paul Witwer, and to my right is basketball fanatic and Paul Stops animator Cameron Frazier. Cameron, what is your experience with basketball, and who's your favorite player?
Well, my experience with basketball is that I played a little bit in elementary school. I remember vividly getting 0 baskets in the time that I played. My favorite team has always been the Dallas Mavericks. I'm from Dallas. All my teams are Dallas teams with varying successes. And my favorite player for the last couple of years has been Steph Curry, because I can't understand a lot about basketball, but I can understand shots going way up in the air and then going into the basket.
I mean, yeah, that's a good... All right. To my left is a man who needs no introduction other than he's my friend and knows little to nothing about basketball. Tyler, what is your experience with basketball, and who is your favorite player?
As you said, my experience with basketball is little to none. I do remember playing a little bit in elementary school, and I wasn't horrible. I was a little horrible, but I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I was a kid, so
You weren't all-time bad.
But yeah. Now I'm an adult, and I am all-time bad, and I'm just amazed how tired I get.
You hit your prime real early.
Exactly.
not extremely terrible, just terrible.
Do you have a favorite player?
Not really, no.
No? Okay, well...
You have to know a player to have a favorite.
I was just thinking maybe from the limited amount that I rambled on about sports that he'd be like, you know what?
He knows
Paul doesn't like this guy, so I'm going to like this guy.
By the end of this episode, we'll come back to him and see if our conversations have led him to love any of these guys.
I will say, though, I think it's funny how me being the shortest out of everyone here, that I am the most in love with basketball, as opposed to Tyler, who's 6'5", and Cameron, who's 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah.
I'm the one who likes basketball the most.
Well, you're the only one who can dunk.
Oh, yeah, well,
Exactly.
I get a lot of help.
So what's your experience with basketball then?
My experience with basketball is I played a lot in elementary school. I've been following basketball probably really closely for over a decade, but I've watched pretty casually now for 15 years at least. I really started watching when I moved to Texas, so the Mavericks have always been my favorite team. Dirk's my favorite player ever. I just like what he stands for, and obviously he's just Dirk. I mean, if you live in Dallas, you love Dirk. So so let's just go ahead and jump right into the first topic. This one kind of hits close to home. I did that on purpose, so we could really hit the ground running. So Luka Doncic is having the best rookie season since LeBron James. So why doesn't he get any attention from the national media? Tyler, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think there are a couple of factors to this. I think one of them comes from the teams they rose from. LeBron rose from the Cavaliers, who were in a pretty historic low for them, and then he was able to get him back going and get him a team worthwhile. And whereas Luka Doncic, he's in the Dallas Mavericks, and the Dallas Mavericks have had historic lows, but they're not currently in one right now. Then the second factor is just Luka Doncic is the second person to. I mean, technically, the feat he has pulled is technically more impressive than LeBron, but he is second to LeBron, and so that makes him by default less interesting.
Okay, those are some interesting points. Cameron, what are your thoughts on something like this?
So I'll tell you that when I first read the question that I didn't know if I agreed with the framing of it. I didn't know if Luka Doncic really was being unfairly treated by the national media. But then when I thought about it a little more, when I looked at it, I realized that I had taken really any sliver of attention he got in the national media as a Dallas Mavericks fan to be, undying praise. Anything we heard about the Dallas Mavericks was important to me because for the last couple seasons we've heard absolutely, nil. So it was just interesting to hear anything. But I think it's true that he hasn't gotten much attention because he's had some really very impressive games that should have been talked about. And I think part of what that has to do with is the most interesting narrative that Luka Doncic occupies is the Rookie of the Year discussion, which generally is not often talked about. We're coming off a year in which it was one of the most interesting stories between Ben Simmons and Donovan Mitchell. But I don't think we're going to see that again for a little while. This year, Luka and Ayton are 1 and 2, but he's certainly running away with it right now. So I don't think there's a lot of interesting discussion about that. And another thing that I think is leading to this is the fact that he came out of the EuroLeague already looking so polished that some people, I assume, already associate him with a full-fledged player. He's a borderline all-star this season, and I think it's more accurate to compare him to the national media attention to someone like LaMarcus Aldridge, whose stats have been similar and who's also gotten not a lot of attention, even though he's occasionally carried the Spurs or been right there with DeMar.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually think LaMarcus Aldridge got more media attention when he was with Portland than San Antonio, and I also think it's kind of interesting that San Antonio doesn't even get more media coverage because they win so many championships.
Yeah.
So I like points both of y'all bring up. Just to kind of throw it out there, I'm going to throw out some stats that kind of compare the two.
Compare Luka and LeBron?
Yeah, that compare Luka and LeBron.
Okay.
Luka and LeBron average roughly the same points per game, rebounds, and assists. I think the big difference between the two so far, obviously Luka's only half of the season in, and this is obviously LeBron's full season, so we don't know exactly if Luka is his numbers will get better, if they'll get worse.
Sure.
I assume they're not going to get worse, right? From what I'm seeing, he's very consistent. This isn't a fluke. Just watching him, it's easy to see that he's obviously under control and knows what he's doing. But yeah, the efficiency numbers I think are the biggest difference between the two, especially from 3-point range. Obviously, Luka's a much better shooter. He's got a more natural stroke. He's shooting 35.5% from 3 compared to LeBron's 29%. Both of their PERs were roughly the same. Luka's got 1 PER more, so at 19.3. And just to give that some context, the league average is 15. And so PER is essentially their personal efficiency rating. So how they affect the game. And the higher your score is, obviously the more you affect the game on a personal level. And then you've got their true shooting percentage or their efficiency field goal percentage. Luka's is at 51% compared to LeBron's 43.8%. Although I will say LeBron contributed more wins towards his team than Luka did towards his team with the wins over replacement. LeBron's is 8.4 and Luka's is currently 6. And that has a lot to do with LeBron had a bigger load to carry. Luka's got Harrison Barnes, Wesley Matthews, DeAndre Jordan to kind of all take more.
DSJ.
And DSJ, a little bit less of DSJ, but he has some people who are actually competent as opposed to the Cavs team that LeBron was kind of thrust into. I think some big points why the media isn't talking about him is because obviously Dallas isn't a large market. They don't get media attention ever unless there's obviously a scandal like there was earlier. We don't really need to go into that. Also, that Luke is from Europe. He's not homegrown. We haven't been following him since he was a freshman in high school. Or I guess LeBron was really a sophomore when we started following him. Luka, he just doesn't. We didn't follow him, so this is kind of a big shock for everyone. And I think most analysts I think were wrong about him or just completely ignored him in general. Stephen A. Smith said most of them couldn't even pronounce his name more than a couple months ago. They didn't know who he was or what he was, didn't see him play, so they're kind of just ignoring him and talking about DeAndre Ayton. I guess we can go on to the next topic since we've kind of spoken our piece about that.
Sure.
So Anthony Davis just requested a trade 10 days away from the February 7 NBA trade deadline, and subsequently the New Orleans Pelicans had a press release about it, and they asked the NBA they requested the NBA follow the regulations on tampering, and the NBA did grant the request. And I wrote this yesterday, the script yesterday, and as of today, currently Anthony Davis did get fined by the league. It was only...
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, It was only $50,000.
Oh my gosh.
Only.
Well,
For Anthony Davis.
for Anthony Davis. I saw a really funny meme actually about it. It was LeBron looking at his phone, and it said, it had I think it was Shams who tweeted it out originally.
Yeah.
And it was LeBron looking at his phone, is it still LeBron? And then it was like, oh, I got you, fam. And he sent a Venmo he sent a Venmo for $500,000 to Anthony Davis. He's like, the $450,000 is just extra. You can keep it. It's not anything serious at all.
It's interesting they decided to go through on it, because it means that they at least, I think everyone could see that there was some fishy stuff happening there, but it's interesting that they decided to go through with something like that.
Yeah, I will say really quickly, so I think it's funny that Jimmy Butler, caused all that havoc with the Timberwolves, embarrassed people in practice immediately after
had an interview.
Sure. And then no one said anything about it.
Yeah.
And then the Draymond Green situation. So Draymond Green texted Kevin Durant and admitted to it right after the finals. And it was like, you need to come to the Warriors. And the NBA was just like, oh, whatever. And then the second a team is like, hey, I need you to actually do something, they're like, oh, and then they do it. So what are your thoughts on this real quick?
Thoughts on the ruling about it, or thoughts on the trade situation?
Thoughts on the ruling.
I think more than anything else, they might have done a similar situation had OKC, after the news came out about Draymond calling KD in the parking lot, they may have given Draymond a similar fine. It might just be specifically because the team came out so publicly and said this. But another situation that these others don't really have in common with this is that Anthony Davis and LeBron James have the same agent. And I think anyone would have to be pretty naive. And it's not just the same agent for Tyler's benefit. It's really LeBron's entire agency that he is certainly going to have a big part in running after. And a lot of people think that he has a big role in managing it now. And so I think part of the reason why the Pelicans might be angry about this is because they think there's some sort of back and forth going on through the intermediary of Rich Paul, which I think is probably the case. I think that's probably happening. And so it doesn't bother me necessarily that they did that, although I think if they're going to do something like that, either give a fine that actually means something, and if they're going to do that, in addition, make sure you're doing that for all players whenever they're doing that. Do it to Jimmy Butler, do it to Draymond, do it to everybody.
So Tyler, what are your thoughts on how the NBA deals with this kind of tampering?
I'm actually kind of surprised that they did end up fining Anthony Davis, because in my research I found in December they had a similar investigation of LeBron, saying, because LeBron said in an interview, hey, it'd be amazing if I could work with Davis. Yeah. They investigated him for tampering, and they found that he had no wrongdoing. So it's surprising me that they're laying down the law on this one. I previously thought that, because I was about to go into this saying that I don't really think this is going to do much, because of the example, they found LeBron did no wrongdoing, so why would the result be any different here? Sure. So the only way I could see it affecting it is if it's stalling for trying to get it past the deadline with him still on board. Yeah.
So I'll read you guys the official NBA language about tampering. So here, like the language they kind of use. So Article 35 of the Constitution and Article states that the NBA can penalize with suspension or fine. And here's an exact quote. Quote, the commissioner shall have the power to suspend for a definite or indefinite period or to impose a fine not exceeding $50,000 or inflict both such suspension and fine upon any player, in his opinion, shall have made or caused to be made any statement having or that was designed to have in effect prejudicial or detrimental to the best interest of basketball or of the association or of a member. So, and according to ESPN front office insider Bobby Marks in an interview with ESPN, he said, quote, although there is language in the NBA Constitution and the collective bargaining agreement, the league has looked the other way when it comes to a player recruiting another player in free agency or in trades, unless a player violates the tampering rules by offering a financial incentive. The league usually looks the other way.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of unfair to Anthony Davis because he didn't say specifically which teams he wants to go to. I mean, it's kind of obvious what team he wants to go to. You know, he signed with Rich Paul. It was clear back then, you know. I think it's kind of unfair that they're kind of setting him as the example.
Yeah.
When the example is minimal and it's just kind of...
It hasn't even happened either yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nothing's even happened. And, you know, there's been so many numerous occasions where players have admitted to tampering and the NBA is just like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of unfair to him to be this poster boy for tampering when really I'm sure he has for at least 2 years now wanted out of New Orleans because they can't seem to get an actual point guard or do anything else. I mean, they swept the Blazers last year, and, you know, the second they hit the Warriors, they got swept. So, you know, he just wants to be in a better situation. And again, he didn't list any specific places that he wanted to go. Now, there are reports saying that in a couple days he's going to say Lakers, or I'm just going to be there temporarily for 2 years if he gets traded to another place. So, which I'm sure that'll happen as well.
Could I ask you a quick question before we moved on?
Yeah.
So Anthony Davis basically just came out and said, hey, my team sucks, I'm on a new one. Mm-hmm. So is there any sort of precedent to that, or is this kind of the first?
It happened earlier this year, yeah. Well, not necessarily that my team sucks, but a player named Jimmy Butler, who played for the Minnesota Timberwolves, basically had that was what Paul was talking about earlier, a very well publicized bout with his teammates, and would go as far as to go into practice with people who were usually on the bench. Assault people, call them soft, and then immediately after, he would have interviews with people talking about how, oh, it's nothing, it's just basketball. You know, he was really out to make the other players look like a bit of the fool in the situation, and so it's certainly players I think now are kind of willing to do stuff like that, especially when they have brands that they can cultivate online where they can kind of talk about this in their own terms, and so I think we might start to see more of this, especially because the league's getting so top heavy. You know, the small market teams are having an extremely difficult time competing, especially if he goes to a large team like the Lakers or the Celtics. Yeah,
I think the Warriors kind of have pushed the league in that direction unintentionally. I mean, they just drafted well. Like, let's be honest. They drafted well, and then they got lucky with KD.
Well, it's not the Warriors' job as well to care about the state of the league. It's the Warriors' job to win championships.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's how it works.
And so the rest of the league is reactionary.
Yeah, exactly. As is their right as well, because they want to win championships too.
So but there's a finite number of resources.
Yes.
There's a finite number of stars.
There are things happening that are not necessarily good for the average fan that may be good for Bob Myers.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's there's so, you know, so you don't even stand a chance unless you have 2 to 3 stars to superstars on your team. Because the Warriors are, I mean, and even if you do have 2 to 3, like, I think the Warriors could probably, if they met the Thunder right now, could probably beat them in 6 games kind of easily.
Yeah.
Same with the Rockets. I mean, they're just that much better, even if other teams have stars and really good talent. So let's go on to the next section, the quick question section.
Sure.
Section. So I'm just going to get your thoughts really quickly on a couple more topics, some other stories that are kind of circling around NBA Twitter, NBA Reddit. So Russell Westbrook is on pace to average a triple-double for the third straight season. Is this a big deal or not a big deal, Cameron?
So it's not necessarily a big deal for me, but I think it is a big deal in the history of the league. I think we'll look back on this stretch as something pretty remarkable. It's worth noting that, I could say that part of the reason people aren't paying so much attention to him this year is because he's having a worse year in terms of efficiency that he's had since his sophomore year in the league. Mm-hmm. But I will say that last year he had a much better season that was pretty much on par with his MVP season. And he averaged a triple-double then as well. I think what happened is he did something that people didn't think was possible when he averaged a triple-double. It won him an MVP, and the extraordinary started to become ordinary. So I think now it's not that big of a deal, but I do think it's something that will be remembered as a pretty extraordinary feat.
Yeah. Tyler, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think he nailed it, but I guess the only thing I have to add is that I did a little research and I saw only one other player has ever even averaged a triple-double in a single season. So now he's on course to doing it 3 times in a row. But, as you said, definitely not as big of a deal as, last season where he did it only twice in a row. And I'm sure if he goes on to do it a 4th time in a row, it will be even less of a big deal then.
Yeah, it's just, that's just Russell Westbrook. That's what he does. He averages triple-doubles.
Yeah, you kind of become desensitized to it. I think, which is why I don't think it's that much of a big deal. Especially, the game today is so fast, and it's a lot easier to get triple doubles in today's game than it was 5 years ago.
Players care about it. There was a time where players didn't care about it at all.
Yeah, exactly. Russell Westbrook definitely cares about. He's got to get his rebounds and his assists. It's very clear. You can tell, they're never going to say it publicly or anything like that. But, if you watch the game, you see Steven Adams jump out of the way of rebounds.
Yeah, Steven Adams boxing out his own teammates is enough as a public statement you need,
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, next question is...
Boogie.
Yeah, Boogie. So, Boogie just came back from his Achilles injury. Does him being there actually change the outcome of the NBA?
Are we starting with me again?
We'll start with Tyler this time, yeah.
Okay. I lean towards yes on this one, just because, first thing, of course, I had to Google who is Boogie Cousins. But, when I did to it, I saw all these headlines like, does DeMarcus make the Golden State Warriors unstoppable? DeMarcus shows just how truly dangerous the Warriors' offense is and things like that. So, clearly, he's a force to be reckoned with. And then, I saw one analysis because, one of the things you're concerned about is the injury going to slow him down? Is he going to be rusty? And how long is it take for him to get back up to his peak?
Yeah.
But, I saw an analysis on ESPN and it said, taking the injury into consideration, it's still expected to give the Warriors 8 more wins.
Yeah.
And so it's that seems like a big number to me. I think that could change what happens in the playoffs.
Yeah. So I have to agree with them here. When you're talking about changing the outcome of the NBA season, I think the odds are at the beginning of the season, if they didn't get DeMarcus Cousins, they were still going to win the finals. And things may change with how the trade deadline goes out. And with the addition of DeMarcus Cousins, I think maybe the scales are tipped a little bit more in their favor. They're still likely to win the finals. But I think what people didn't really think would happen, and you don't see it so much now because people don't like to admit they're wrong for one, and because people seem to now be acting like everyone knew he was going to be this good. It's not true. People thought that DeMarcus Cousins at the time could have destroyed their locker room. He thought that he would have got there and not been able to move. And I kept seeing, many Warriors fans saying all he has to do is be better than Kayvon Looney. And he has done that, and he's been almost as good as he was when he left last. He's on limited minutes, but he looks to be, at times, one of their top 3 players. Sometimes Draymond and Clay are going to have better nights than him, but he looks like he's a definite starter for the team, and it's not something I expected to see when I saw that, he went down like that and when he went to the Warriors. So I think it's something that's going to impact the league.
Yeah, I find it kind of funny that with today's medicine and training and rehab, that people still think that an injury like that will just completely destroy a player's career, especially when Boogie's, not very old. He's like maybe 27.
Yeah.
He's going to recover from that. Now, if he was 35, it'd be a little bit more difficult. But, I mean, he's young. With today's medicine, stuff like that, it's not a big deal if you get one Achilles injury.
Maybe
especially,
just like wishful thinking, people hoping that he wasn't as good as he was.
Yeah,
the team that they
that's
hate,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to create headlines and things like that. I don't think it's going to change the overall outcome of the season, but I do think it'll help them secure the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
So it'll be a little bit easier for them.
Yeah. I think that's right on.
Yeah. So James Harden has been on a record-setting pace lately. What are the chances he keeps this up for the remainder of the season? And how far can the Rockets go if he does, Cameron?
So Chris Paul just came back. Clint Capella, who went out last week or 2 weeks ago, looks like he's going to be out for considerably longer. But I think Chris Paul coming out will mean that Harden will definitely slow down his offensive pace because there's at least someone else he can throw the ball to other than Fareed. But I also think that if Chris Paul hadn't come back, it was unlikely that Harden would have continued on this stretch. It was looking... He was putting up the same numbers, but he was visibly getting gas at the end of games. He has the highest usage in the NBA this year. So I think the team will continue to be as good as they are now. I think Harden definitely, when Chris Paul went down, people thought that might be it for the Rockets. They were having a rough start to the season, and James Harden looked like the MVP he was last year. So I think that it's likely that they could go to the conference finals. I think they'll get a really good seed. I think it's them and the Nuggets for 2 or 3, and then we'll see how far it goes. We saw last year that really anything can happen when you get that far in the playoffs, but I still think it's likely that they'll lose to the Warriors.
Mm-hmm. Tyler, what are your thoughts on this?
So basically the way I went about it was, first I checked to see, is he normally a good player or is he an average player that's just having an abnormally good start?
And what'd you find?
And he definitely seems like a solid above average player.
Yeah, I think that's right.
He's all right.
So then I thought, okay, we're about roughly halfway through the season, give or take. So I'm going to give it a 50-50 because
okay.
Because it's a matter of, is he going to choke in the later half? What are the odds of that?
Sure.
And so do you lean either way? It's 50-50?
Yeah, I think both outcomes are equally plausible.
Okay, there you go.
Keeps it going or he doesn't keep it going.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point about choking because James Harden's pretty notorious for choking. Not really in the regular season. He's actually kind of more on the clutch side, which is interesting. Yeah. And then he just completely switches in the playoffs. I don't know if he runs out of energy, if it's a stage or what, just different style of play. But
and last year he was a little bit better. Not in Game 7. Game 7 was pretty disastrous.
Yes. 35 missed.
But at least that series was not as bad as the Spurs series they had, which is
that was
gonna be on his career for the rest of his life. I think
40-year-old Manu Ginobili blocking his game-winning shot.
Yeah,
or him bouncing it off of his foot, or dribbling it off of his foot. That's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
He's gonna have to keep up this pace. I mean, he really doesn't have any other choice. I don't think CP3 is what CP3 was last year.
Yeah.
Capella's out. I think it's funny how we're talking about his second option is Kenneth Fareed when he was unplayable with the Nets.
Yeah.
I really like Kenneth Fareed. I've always liked Kenneth Fareed. He's just it's just one of those crazy dudes who's just always got a bunch of energy and
and that's what Harden needs right now. He needs someone with energy to take it off of him, and I don't know if an old Chris Paul is really going to do that for him.
Way overpaid.
You're right. He might need to keep up the pace. So I don't think he can right now.
Yeah. All right. So our next section. So obviously you guys know I script everything. I give you guys the questions ahead of time.
Not our answers, but you do script the questions.
I script the questions, and obviously I don't know what your guys' answers are going to be, where you're going to lean.
Okay.
But for this next section, I call it the lightning round. I'll probably end up calling it something better.
No, I like the lightning round.
Better later on, but right now it's just a lightning round.
So no Googling for this section either.
Yeah, no
Okay.
Googling for this section.
Okay, we turned off our notes.
No devices. You guys don't know what the questions are.
Okay.
And I don't want anything more than just an answer.
Okay, just a quick answer. Sure.
We'll start with Tyler.
Okay.
No, we'll start with you, Cameron.
Okay.
Then we'll go to Tyler because that's putting him in an unfair spot,
Okay,
honestly.
give me
We'll start with Cameron,
let me
Tyler,
repeat
and then
Cameron's
I'll go
answer.
It can
last.
either be a yes, no, or a answer to these questions. Okay.
Yeah. Top 3 for MVP.
Top 3 for MVP this year. I'm going to put it at Harden at number 1 with Giannis close behind, and then Paul George a rather distant third.
Okay, Tyler.
I see no reason to object to Cameron's answer.
Hold on. Without those 3 players I just named, I want you to name 3 current NBA players.
Okay, LeBron James.
Nice.
David Nowinski.
Not David.
Ooh, not David.
You can do it. Starts with a D.
I just
It's
had
German.
my
It's super German.
Dirk Nowinski.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there it is.
There you go. Okay, that's 2.
That's
2. Bring it home.
Fuck, I just had a blank.
Michael Jordan is not currently playing.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, we might have to move on from this.
Okay, we'll move on. At the end,
Luka Dirking.
Luka Dirchis. There we go.
There it is. My top 3 for MVP are Harden, Steph, then Giannis. Wild card LeBron if he comes back and goes God mode.
Just like to say thank you so much for putting some respect on my
Listen,
my boy's name there. Thank you very much.
Steph, my boy Steph.
My boy Steph.
Just kidding, he ain't my boy.
Son.
But no, he's my boy. I like Steph a lot. No, I shouldn't say that.
Okay, lightning round.
No, sorry. What did you learn about basketball recently?
Do you want to go?
I learned something about basketball. I learned who some players' names are.
Okay.
Anything specifically, like a specific name that you learned?
I learned Anthony Davis. I learned Boogie or DeMarcus Cousins. I learned.
You can call him
Real
Boogie.
name.
I think we have that relationship with him.
You got that casual relationship with Boogie now. Cameron, what about you?
I learned as a result of the whole Anthony Davis thing. I did not know before this week that tampering applied, as you said earlier, to players as well as the organization. I thought that it was just the organization talking to them, but I didn't know that just a player, having a conversation while they're queued up on Fortnite could be enough to get fined $50,000.
Luka better watch out.
Luka better watch out.
He's queued up all the time. Mine was roughly the same answer. Like
Okay.
I didn't realize that Draymond just completely tampered in 2016 after the finals.
Because we've all heard the story. Well, not all of us at the table, but all of us in the royal week.
the Royal Week
have heard the story.
The r/NBA.
Sure.
So, who is your favorite player of all time? Starting with Cameron.
Of all time, I don't know, man. That's a tough one for me. I really only started watching basketball completely within the last 5 years, and so I have a lot of love for Dirk as somebody who gave my team a championship when I was still basically a kid at watching the NBA. And my favorite player in all of time is probably Michael Jordan, because Like Mike is such a good movie. But it's hard for me to not say Steph, because when Steph's on the court, it makes me the happiest when I'm watching basketball. I think you have a similar style of the person you're going to answer, but when he's on the court, it makes me so happy. So that's what I'll go with.
Tyler?
Those 3.
I'm gonna go with Michael Jordan for his role in Space Jam.
There we go. Another
There
great
you
movie.
go. Extendo arm. My favorite player of all time. I really fight with this a lot because I want to say Dirk. Like I actually said that earlier in the podcast. Like, my favorite player is Dirk. But recently it's LeBron. I mean, I just love the guy as a person and as a basketball player. I mean, it's just some of the stuff he does is just absolutely incredible. Especially after the 2016 finals, I was just like, this is the best thing that's ever happened, honestly.
You eat shit in a parade for this man.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Maybe not that far.
Who is the sorriest team in basketball?
The sorriest team in basketball right now? Oh, man. Tyler, do you want to go first? You have to name a basketball team, but it gives me a chance to think about it.
I don't know. Cavaliers didn't seem to do well without LeBron.
Yeah, the Cavaliers are definitely a good team. I'll say that I watched a Lakers-Chicago Bulls game, and it was the only basketball game that I've seen that didn't even really resemble basketball. So I might have to say the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, for me it's the Cavs. I mean, they're just, I don't know what they are. I don't know what they're trying to do. They really have no direction. At least for the Bulls, it's kind of just like they fired Fred Hoiberg. They got Lowry Markkanen, so that's pretty cool. I mean, the Cavs have what, Chetty Osman?
See, what the Cavs did, I know this is a lightning round, but what the Cavs did that's so interesting to me is it looked like they were on the road to tanking, and then for some ungodly reason they put Kevin Love on an incredibly big contract who then promptly died and is out for the season. I don't know what you're thinking as an organization.
They don't.
They
That's
They're
why
thinking they're going
LeBron
to get
has
another
left
first
twice.
round, and then Zion is going to get a huge Nike poster.
And then he's going to hate it. So who gets picked last in the All-Star draft?
Oh, wow. That's hard. This is unfair to Tyler for sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. Who gets picked last in the All-Star draft? Luka Doncic.
Oh,
He's there.
that was fine. You
He's
just got to
there.
stop stealing my answers. Mine was Luke as well.
That's
They're
what I
just
hope.
going
That's what
to
I hope.
absolutely destroy.
What a coincidence. Mine was also Luka.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, oh, yes. I mean, that's great. Well,
actually,
their minds think
I
alike.
hope the last pick is KD because I want to see what would happen. I want to see if he can get.
Oh, that would be.
I want to see if we can see steam.
Him or Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook has been all-time level salt.
Can you imagine the whole team goes and it's just Westbrook and KD on the against the brick wall together, just looking. They can't make eye contact.
They can't look at each other. So yeah, that's everything that we have for this episode.
You know, before you do the outro, can I actually jump in and give a lightning round question to you really quick?
Yeah.
Who is your favorite fictional basketball star of all time? Not necessarily a human being, but your favorite movie basketball player or TV show basketball player. Who would that go to?
Ooh, that's tough. I want to say Bugs Bunny.
You want to say Bugs Bunny?
I do want to say Bugs Bunny.
Great facilitator. Always knew how to get Mike the ball. Sure.
Or Lola. I mean, but Bugs Bunny. Yeah, it's Bugs Bunny.
Tyler, do you have?
I was going to say Lola Bunny.
There you go. I gotta say mine is either two very similar people. I have to say Air Bud or Jim from The Office.
Oh yeah,
but I'm gonna have
Air Bud's a good answer.
But I think you have to give it to Jim because he crossed up a man's fiance in front of her and got props from her, and so that's
there you go.
The most cold blood thing I've seen since MJ pushed up. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh wow, okay. I mean, I agree with you. Thank you all for listening to our first episode. Not sure how regular these episodes will be, but if it starts to gain traction, we will start making more episodes. If you liked it, please stay tuned for more episodes and share with your friends. Please share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email,
TikTok.
TikTok. I mean,
Dig Dug.
Vine. I mean,
Vine.
bring Vine back just to share.
Bring it back just to share it. Yeah.
Yeah, also check out our website, thepaulstopsphere.com, for more content like this. If you like Stylist Podcast, we got some great articles up there right now, and we just keep continuing to post stuff. Yeah, thank you guys very much.
And let us know who your favorite fictional movie basketball player is.
Yeah.
And Tyler, one more basketball player.
Oh my god.
Oh, we
We'll
did
see you
that.
next
We said
time.
we
Let's go.
can't do it.
I will come up with a list of players. By the time we're back.
Alrighty.